Okay,
I
I'm
didn't.
here for it. I'm here to hear it. The dogs cannot believe what you're saying.
Hello and welcome to very exciting video. Joined again by Chris. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you for having me once again.
Yes, I had to pay him a lot of money, but he's here. No, you wish. I don't think Chris would need to be paid to talk about this band because I know for a fact that you are a fan to some extent of Alvvays. They are an indie pop group from, well, formed in the early 2010s, and they've just released a new album Friday, which we both listened to multiple times to be able to acquaint ourselves. Because I feel like, especially when a new album comes out, there isn't like a historical context. So you kind of, I feel like you have to put more effort into your listening in preparation for an episode like this. It's kind of the first time that's happened, really, where I've had a new release for an episode. So there's a challenge.
Scramble to get it known. Yeah.
So I guess, how did you get to know the band? What was your first exposure to them?
Yeah, cool. So the first time I ever heard Always was they opened for Courtney Barnett. Um and I'll never forget this. It was on 420 of 2016. Um my now wife and I had just gotten back from like our first vacation together to San Francisco, and it was like the next day. Bought these Courtney Barnett tickets. She was on tour for her Sometimes I sit and think, sometimes I just sit. Album, which I really liked some songs from, so we got the tickets. I didn't even look at who was opening. I usually would kind of research that, but I didn't. And Always opened, and they were so good. And they played a few tracks. Um, it wasn't like a big show, so maybe they played like four or five. And at this time, they only had their first album out, so that's like half the songs they had, right?
Yeah.
But they played a few, and then the last song they played was Archie, Marry Me, and everyone in the crowd knew every word, and we didn't, so it was kind of embarrassing, but it was just so good, and the crowd was electric, and Molly just sounded awesome, and the band sounded great, and I'm like, okay, obviously we have to look into these guys. So that night went home and listened to that album. I then bought the album on CD and vinyl, and it's been a frequent spinner ever since. Yeah. So that was my first exposure, was actually seeing them live.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's I always love a little anecdote to start an episode. Always great. But yeah, for me, I've got a very much less interesting anecdote. I think it was around the same time, maybe, when I've sort of talked about this, not on the channel, but I guess on Discord and stuff. How
Mm.
my music taste had a rough beginning. I was, into some stuff that I don't listen to anymore, particularly. And I think a lot of people of my generation can kind of relate to that. Getting into music is sort of like a slower process.
Mm.
And I remember hearing, it was on my Discover Weekly on Spotify. I would guess maybe 2017, 2018, something like that. And
Okay. Of
it was Archie Marry Me that came up on my Discover
course.
Weekly. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. I love this hook. Great, fun song. And yeah, and then for some reason, I listened to that song on loop for a few years. And then I never really looked into them deeper.
Talk further. Yeah,
And then,
sure. Can
yeah,
happen.
yeah. And then I started university, and I had a few friends who were into sort of the indie 2010s indie stuff. Um, you know, they like cool music, cool current music that is not in the mainstream. And always, I feel like Archie Marry Me is one of their biggest songs, but songs like Adult Diversion and Dreams Tonight as well, I was sort of coming across. And then I just decided on one day to just, because the both albums are like 30 minutes long, I just chucked them both on, and then I enjoyed them, and I didn't really think about, thinking about, because it's only two albums, I didn't think about it as a
That's it. Yeah.
discography. I was like, okay, cool. This was like 2019, the last one was in 2017. I was like, oh, they'll release another album at some point. And then obviously the turbulence that happened that I only knew about recently in terms of releasing this new one took a while to bring it out. So, but yeah, they're a band I've liked for a while. Don't worry, Chris, I'm not going to break your heart here. This is going to be a wholesome episode,
Oh, good.
and yeah, I think we're just going to both share in enjoying a band, which is nice. Sort of, if you haven't seen the video we did on Ween, as you can see behind Chris there, the nice poster. That is also a very nice video. I think we both sort of shared our passions for the band. And yeah, plenty of other videos on the channel. So go check them all out. But watch this one first, because
Watch all of them.
I'll hand you over to Chris for his number 3.
Okay. Well, being only 3 albums, they, like you said, it's they're all 30 some minutes long. So, you run through the discography in just over 100 minutes. And so it's tough to put something at number 3 because it feels like a slight. But I really do like all these albums. So my number 3 is gonna have to be Blue Rev. Yeah, darn it. I'm guessing we don't have a match there. Um, I'm very excited this is here. And even more than that, I'm very excited that this was not a flop or was not exciting. I would have been happy if this was just kind of a passable album, but the album is very good. It's very good. It's only third because of how much I love the other two, and I'll get into that. But for there being these delays, obviously, lineup change, COVID, people stole their stuff, other acts of God and man. A lot kind of writing against them for this, and obviously that can be disastrous for a band. Um, I think that a lot of people would not be able to put out quality material after that, and you wouldn't necessarily expect much, but this sure had a lot of hype around it, and at least in some circles, and I'm just thrilled that they lived up to it. I think the sounds on this album are just great. So they started releasing the singles kind of in months leading up to this, and I think Pharmacist came out actually several months ago. So that was the only single I had heard until Friday. I kind of vowed to just listen to the album as a whole. Once it started getting closer, I saw that they dropped a few more, and I tried to avoid looking at all the memes on my Archie posting community. But uh, you know, I liked Pharmacist, and I was excited to see. As a lead single, in retrospect, I'm like, this isn't even close to the best song on the album, but that's okay. I think that they were giving a taste of kind of the different sound that this album portrays, and I think the album starts off really strong. The first 2 songs are a little bit more like Wall of Sound, a little more Jesus and Mary Chain than kind of the jangle pop riffs that especially were present in the self-titled first album. But then when they get to After the Earthquake, it's like it just feels like I'm back home, and that's really a highlight of the album for me, that song. But I do think the big sound like really suits them. I think Molly's voice really goes along well with that, and it's easy to get lost in kind of this dreamlike haze of the guitars, and though there's less like poppy hooks overall, I think that they make Jim Reed pretty proud here. So the the next 2 songs after that, Tom Verlaine into Pressed, I think they're good in the context of the album. I don't really think they stand out. I think I kind of get a little bit lost, and that's a little bit early to get lost in an album after just 3 songs. So I think that's gonna prevent me from really putting it higher. I don't dislike them. I again, in the context of listening to it, I think they're good, but if they came on shuffle, I would probably be like, okay, these are fine. It pops back with many mirrors, which I think sounds great. The lyrics are fine, but I think the song the production is awesome. And then you get to Very Online Guy, which is just totally out there. It's a very different sound, and the lyrical content is very interesting. I kind of think of myself as a very online guy, so um, it kind of personal attacks here. But I do like the he's only one filter away kind of concept, and I'm not sure if it's a nod or a dig to the omnipresent online culture of many people, and surely many of their fans. But here I am on the internet talking about it, so sure, I guess. It's different, it's fun. I think it fits the album pretty well, and their overall sound. So um, that's cool. I think Velveteen is an awesome track. It starts pretty normal, but Molly's voice is just gorgeous on this. She hits these high notes at the end that are just crushing and beautiful. Um, so they have a lot of these still sensibilities about them. Um, Tile by Tile has a nice pulse to it. It's not very guitar forward. But I love the lyrics about like letting the telemarketers win, and she just like willingly gives up her credit card information because she already picked up the phone and taking a chance it was her lost love. That's just like a funny concept where you're just like, okay, you win. Um, and then you get Pomeranian Spinster. It's a fun, kind of faster track. I think it works pretty well. They have a few of those on Antisocialites that I like a lot. So it kind of reminds me of something off that. But then I think it's kind of overshadowed by Belinda Says, which is just an awesome track. I think this is definitely a highlight of the album. Just a dreamy song about a simpler life, per the heaven on earth as described by Belinda Carlisle. It's a cool shout out. I think relatable topics here, and trying to find your own heaven on earth, and I think it's an instant classic. Um, then you go into Board in Bristol, which I really like the intro sound, and I think it stands as a pretty strong track towards the end of the album. Um, I can't quite say the same for Lottery Noises. I don't know. It's kind of mid, as the kids say. And it's just a little bit less gripping than the others. And again, I kind of lump it in with those other two I mentioned, where if I'm listening to the album, I think it flows pretty well. But in the context of like a shuffle, it would be fine. Um, I do like the ending track though a lot. It's pretty short, and Molly's voice kind of matching the synth. She kind of harmonizes with it, and it almost sounds like choral or hymnal, like a church choir sound. And I think it just fits the end of the album really great. And best of all, it doesn't really overstay its welcome. It doesn't really drag out. It's like a minute and some seconds long. So I think much like the rest of the album, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It sounds great. The production is awesome. And I think everyone has great performances here. I regret putting it last. It definitely could grow on me. It's already grown on me after listening to it a few times, but um, I will give it in third place. I'm gonna have to give it a 9.
Very nice. Very nice. Very well said. I love your zeal for the band. It's very infectious. Very, very wholesome. I like it. I don't like them quite as much as you, but we're still going to be having a lot of fun talking about them. My number three,
Yeah.
you're right, not a match. My number three is the debut, the self-titled.
Okay.
And I feel like this is an album of two halves for me. I think the A side is phenomenal, and the B side is okay. That's kind of how I
Okay.
view the album. I
Okay.
think Adult Diversion is as a way to introduce yourselves as a band is unbelievable, just fantastic. And then that goes straight into Archie Marry Me. As I mentioned, the first song of theirs I heard, I absolutely adore it. I think Ones Who Love You is pretty nice. I think it's hard to follow those two tracks I think it does a really good job in terms of pacing because they're quite sort of full on, and that one sort of just mellows out a little bit, which I like. I think Next of Kin has just the opening riff to that song is unbelievable. Really great guitar work throughout the whole song. And then you got Party Police, which is also fantastic. So the A side, I mean, I can't fault it. It's paced perfectly. All the songs are great, great performances. And then the B side, it's not that again, it's not that it's bad. It's just that for me, like the album listening experience is important. And although this has some of their best songs, as a flow of an album, it's very much a debut. It's very much they're still figuring things out, in my opinion, anyway. Um, and I think the agency group is pleasant, maybe a little bit forgettable. I've listened to this album, I think, 3 times now, and I couldn't tell you how it goes. I think the drum machine on Dives is a bit, I don't know, it doesn't really fit the song very well, I don't think. And I don't know, I think the song falls a bit flat. So that's 2 in a row where you just a bit, I'm a bit like wanting a bit more. That said, I think A Top of Cake injects a bit more energy into the album, which I do appreciate. And that's definitely the highlight of the B side for me. And then the closing track, Red Planet, I do think is a little bit underwhelming as well. That said, I don't want to sour the discussion because that A side as an EP would be like a 9 or a 10 because it's great. But it's that sort of, yeah, it's quite uneven quality wise. And I think what they would hone on LP 2 and 3 is the idea of making a cohesive album that has a bit more variety, a bit more sort of dynamism and excitement throughout the album. I mean, nothing gets me as pumped as listening to the first 2 tracks on this album, but it doesn't quite sustain that level throughout for me. I think this is a good album. I'll listen to it again. It's a good one to put on, in a very specific kind of mood. It sort of is a mood album for me where I do enjoy it. But yeah, I think it's quite limited in terms of how often I will listen to it in full. But the highlight tracks are great, so it's a strong 7 for me. I like it. I think it's good stuff. But I think they would go on to do better. So the debut is my number 3.
Well, very good. I don't disagree with a lot of what you say. And my number 2 is the self-titled debut. Um, I do have a lot of love for this album. Again, these are kind of the first songs I heard live from them, and that could be biasing me a little bit for sure. Um, you know, my wife and I just started dating. One of the first shows we went together to, and just awesome. But I think for a debut, you said it. The first couple tracks really are just awesome. I really love Adult Diversion, which is just kind of an awesome pop song about stalking someone. Archie Marry Me, which is talking about the negatives of marriage and then throwing yourself to it. Um, it's all just very shimmery, jangly, incredible pop hooks all over this album. Molly's voice is, a little bit twee, but just has this great air about it that I love. And I just think they just come out swinging. Um, I mentioned Archie Marry Me. Yeah, you said Next of Kin, Party Police. Just those guitar parts are just so beautiful. Had to learn them right away. They're still fun to just kind of slide up and down. I really like Ones Who Love You and Dives. I think yeah, the drum machine on the latter is a little bit sleepy, but um, I still think overall it works as a good track. And then A Top of Cake is definitely a standout on the album. So Red Planet and the Agency Group are a little bit weaker. I definitely admit to that. I don't think they necessarily stand alone too well. outside the context of the album, and I don't skip them when listening to the album or anything. But again, if they come on shuffle, I'll be like, okay. um, this is a fantastic record though, and I definitely recommend it to anyone interested in jangle pop, fun guitar riffs. It's like 32 or 3 minutes long. I mean, you just put it on, check it out. You don't have much to lose if it's not your thing. But it is fun. These Canadians do jangle pop the correct way, and I give it a 9. I love it. It's not perfect. It definitely has a few little issues, a few growing pains, but there's so much to love here, and I think as an introduction to the band, this is just great. So I do give it a 9. Maybe overrating it a bit, but I just love it.
And I mean, if I you definitely have a more personal connection to it. You've known it for longer than I have, so yeah, I could definitely, you know, maybe one day it'll just hit me in a way where I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever done. And that's the beauty of music.
That is the
Now,
beauty.
you might not be
Uh-oh.
expecting this.
Uh-oh. We're not gonna have any matches.
My number two is Antisocialites.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Didn't think this would happen.
Okay. Okay.
It's an album I've known and enjoyed for a couple of years now. Um, yeah, I think I checked this out a while after the debut. I've always loved the album cover. I think it's very striking. It's very cool. And for some reason, the thing with me is that if I like an album cover, it makes me want to listen to something more. I don't know
Okay.
if other people get that, but yeah, I think it's a more dreamy album, a more expansive album than the debut. They definitely sort of mellow out a bit from the debut. It's a bit less sort of uh, like jangly and fast paced than a lot of the moments on the debut are. But there are moments of that. I think In Undertow is a superb opener. I think it really announces their new sort of more dream pop sound. Sort of a lot more synth work on this album, I think, than the debut as well. Um, I think then you get Dreams Tonight, which, oh my gosh, that song is just. We'll be talking about that in the songs video, I'm sure. So I don't think I need to go too much into it at the moment. I think it's just pure bliss. I think Plimsoll Punks completes the godly trifecta that opens this album once again, much like the debut. Bang, 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 just greatness right at the top. And I think Your Type is a fun little tune as well, even if it's not quite as strong as the first three. I think Not My Baby is a really pleasant melody. I think Hey is definitely an album track. It's definitely not, one to take out on its own, but in the context of the album, I think this is what I'm talking about, the album experience. I think the lesser tracks on the debut sort of detracted from it, whereas I think the lesser tracks here, they sort of work in the flow of the album. So, like you said, not going to skip any of these. I really like Lollipop Ode to Jim, which I think is a forgotten favorite that I rediscovered re-listening for this, which was really cool. I think Already Gone is quite pretty. Saved by a Wife is a bit more fun, which I like. And yeah, it's just a very fun, straightforward, straight through listen. It's not that I think that the back half is weak like I do on the debut, but I do think that the best tracks are once again are all at the front, which with the newest one, we'll see what I
We'll
have to
get
say.
there.
Yeah, we'll see what I have to say regarding that. But I do think Forget About Life is a much better closer than Red Planet. I think it is a nice way to cap it off. It sort of breezes by. It's sort of it's nice. I think swift listen, goes by very quickly, the whole album. It's always a good time getting lost in the album, but I rarely seek it out, weirdly. It's not one that's like constantly in my rotation, but whenever I do, it's sort of like a friend that you don't see as much as you used to. And
Old friend.
whenever you do hang out, it's great, but you don't necessarily make the effort to hang out all the time, and that's fine. I think it is, yeah, when I'm in the right mood, like with the debut, it's great stuff. But this is a lot less mood dependent as a full listen, I think, because I feel like it holds together quite well as an album. I really wanted to go to a 9, but I'm going to stick with an 8. I think it's a great album,
Okay.
really strong. For context, I would probably like it better than like Chocolate and Cheese or something. So don't feel too bad. I
It's a
think it's
strong 8.
I think it's real good. But obviously, I have put the new one above it. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting. So you've rated them better in order of their release. So
yeah,
they've only gotten better in your eyes, which is obviously
no,
not a bad take. So well, obviously we're not matching. As my
next
number
time,
one
next time.
is Antisocialites. Um, so this came out when I was already a fan of the first album, and not that long after, actually, because I first discovered the first album in 2016. So I was very happy that they were already going to double their catalog the following year, and I wasn't really following album releases back then so much. I think I saw a post about it and thought I would check it out. I listened to it um, on Spotify, maybe not the day, but definitely the week that it came out. And then they announced a tour. I just impulse bought the tickets to go see them, and I absolutely no regrets. This album is just it's peak Jangle Pop to me. It's so good. There are a fewer a couple fewer. I don't know. There are fewer maybe guitar hooks, poppy guitar hooks than there are on the debut, which is just rich with them. So maybe not a fair comparison. Um, but I think the synths and the soundscapes they create here more than make up for that. Um, you mentioned Dreams Tonight, obvious, there's a lot said about it online and for good reason. The imagery and soundscapes are just top notch, and um, I really don't think there's a dud here. I I can't even say that any song isn't really my favorite because even Hey, which is weaker than some of the others, I suppose. I still love it, and I just think that this album just works very harmoniously together. Um, everything sounds great. Plimsoll Punks is a fun, faster one. Your Type is just great. I love the bit about you know, just talking literally about how I'm not, we'll never be compatible kind of thing. Um, you'll never be all right. I'll never be your type. And then she says, you're an O and I'm a B. Like, our blood types aren't even the same. Kind of just a funny nod about just not being compatible. Um, and yeah, it's 32 minutes. It's tune after tune, and there's a lot of good songs here. Um, but the real magic about this album. Do you know what the real magic is?
Tell me.
It's everything. It's everything about it. It's all of it. Yeah, it's everything. That's the magic. It's just the entire experience. Um, it's a 10. It's a 10 for me. I put this yeah, I don't know if it's top 25 all time, but it's certainly top 50. Um, I might be able to sneak it in 25 if I get cheeky, but I love it. I think I think it's a real triumph for the band, and this, you know, again, no knock against the other two albums. I was very happy with the new release. I can't wait to get more familiar with it. The debut will always be pretty special to me, but this one, just as a sophomore release, just strikes me as just an incredible strength, and for that reason, it's my number one always album.
I mean, it was always going to be tough to unseat one of those two for the new
Of
one
course, of
after
course.
about 3 days of it being out. So, yeah. However,
However, no, this is good. This is good.
so let me give you a bit of a history of my music taste. Not history,
Okay.
sort of a backstory. I'm a big shoegaze fan. I'm a big sort of so I love like Cocktail Twins and Slowdive, and I think My Bloody Valentine are really cool. And a lot of artists that have also had, I think, after that initial movement, there was a lot of artists that took it as part of their sound. I just think it's a really captivating sound, and I think this is the album. Another thing is that I also love albums with a lot of variation, as we discussed with Ween, because you would need to if you were going to like Ween, because you're getting it whether you like it or not. And I think this hits the sweet spot in both of these. My number one is Blue Rev, by the way. Yeah, so time to talk about this. Quite daunting. I remember when Pharmacist came out, and I was completely blown away. I listened to that thing so much when it came out because like I said, I like those two albums, especially Antisocialites. I like that album a lot, but it wasn't one that I was like always having in my constant rotation. I was like, whenever I thought about it, I was like, great album, really enjoy that. But it isn't like, let me put that on every time I think about it, like some albums are.
Sure.
And I heard Pharmacist, and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. It's like 2 minutes long, and then it has this like explosion of noise in the last 30 seconds, which is just so captivating to me. And her vocals sound more confident and assured than ever. And then I was like, I'm not hearing anything else till this album comes out. I'm going to wait. And
Stay pure.
Yeah, we both did. And I'm glad that I did because, yeah. So Pharmacist, I think, dawns a new era for the band. I think they're experimenting more. Those first two albums are very comfy, very cozy, very, I don't want to say straightforward because that makes it sound like an insult, but they sort of have a formula. And I feel like with this album, the formula is out the window. There is so much dynamism and surprises on this album that I really enjoy. Easy on Your Own takes the baton from Pharmacist and is this equally epic sounding song. And I love the catharsis of the last chorus. Her vocals really, really shining on that song. You mentioned After the Earthquake. That is the jangliest of jangle pop that ever jangled. It is sort of like reminiscent of like 80s college rock in a lot of ways. Sort of like shoegaze the Smiths, which that is right up my street. And then the bridge is this really quiet sort of synth-led part, which I love as well. You mentioned Tom Verlaine and Prest, not cutting it as much for you. Tom Verlaine instantly caught my eye because I'm a big television fan, and I kind of like it when songs are named after other musicians. I think that's kind of like Alex Chilton by The Replacements is like the one I think about, where the whole song is imagining a world where Big Star were as big as the Beatles, and I just think that's just amazing. And this song obviously does not live up to Alex Chilton because not many things could, for me anyway. But I think it's a good song. It's got a cool bounce to it. And again, sort of similar to what I was saying about Antisocialites, they really front load their albums. They like to put their best foot forward, which I think is a good way of being, because how else are you going to grab someone's attention, right? And then I think Prest is really great as well, really just gorgeously jangly, and it's over before you even know it, but I still think it's great. You mentioned a Very Online Guy. Might be a bit controversial. It's one of my least favorites on the album. I'm not a fan of the lyrics. It's just something about lyrics about the internet is like not for me. Although if you had to do it, this is one of the better ways you could do it. I just don't think as sort of lyrical content it's all that engaging. And like you said, it's a bit strange in the context of the album. It's a bit of a left turn of an album full of left turns. Even like within a song, you can have such a drastic left turn, like on After the Earthquake, like I mentioned, that bridge just comes out of nowhere. That's what I love about this album. It's so, like I mentioned, dynamic is the best word I could think of. Tile by Tile has a great soundscape. Sort of the driving bass rhythm is sort of Fleetwood Mac's Dreams-esque, how it's just sort of bouncing along. There's a really nice vibe. The strings and synths give it a sort of otherworldly feel as well. Pomerian, is it pronounced? Spinster?
I thought it was Pomeranian. Okay, yeah.
I guess neither of us know. Has a great guitar tone, and really punky, and I think they pull it off quite well. And yeah, you mentioned Belinda Says. That is a song. Fantastic lyrics. I love the lyrics in the chorus, and the sort of reminiscent of the. This is probably one of the songs that's most reminiscent of a band like Slowdive or a band like Cocteau Twins, where that sort of soaring chorus that feels like everything that matters in the world is at risk, and I love that. Terrific production. Then there's Bored in Bristol. Shout out Bristol, pretty cool place. It's great, cool bass line, nice, less bombastic vibe to that song. Again, works really well in the pace of the album. And I think the album does end quite strong. Like, I think Fourth Figure, you mentioned that as the closing track, I think is a bit, I don't know, it's nice. I maybe would have even liked it as like a full song. Like, I like it, but I feel like it's sort of a coda more than an actual closing track. And I think that's okay, but I don't know, maybe it's just me. And I think, it might be early to proclaim this as their best album, but I've listened to it twice. I've taken a lot of notes. I've compared it in my mind to the other albums, and I looked at my songs list, and spoilers, this one has the most appearances in the songs list. So I feel like it's pretty undeniable. I think it's very me in how adventurous and how it can go from like really pretty to really just like gritty and aggressive. I think it's epic, dynamic, engaging, dreamy, and beautiful. So a 9 out of 10 for Blue Rev. I love it. Album of the not album of the year contender, but album of the year top 5 for sure.
It'll be mentioned. Great. Well, I do agree that it's a 9.
There we go.
So there we have it. We matched on that, if nothing else.
Hopefully on the songs we'll match up somehow.
I should think so. Well, very good. A lot of good words here, and yeah, I get the sense that even your weakest, you still would appreciate, and I'm just so happy. I already mentioned this, but I'm just so happy that after all this time, after the lineup change, after some adversity for the band, they came through strong, and Blue Rev, despite it being third, is not a knock at all. There's a lot of great content within this 120 minutes, give or take, of this band. So
go stream Blue Rev, everyone who's watching. Go
check it out. Go check it out. It's definitely worth your time. If you're at all a fan of jangle pop, shoegaze, etc.
Well, thank you for coming on. This is a pleasure.
Thanks for having me once again. Yeah, this was a nice one, huh?
Yeah, I enjoyed that. That was very wholesome. And we'll be back with songs, as is tradition here. By now, I think the Genesis video will be out, and the next one after this will be Wilco with Vanessa, who will be making her first appearance. So that'll be fun. Big one. So
big W.
Yeah, thank you for watching, and join us for the songs whenever that's out.
And please, if you have not, like and subscribe, hit that bell for notifications.
You're better at this than I am.